Josh Hastings here, Israel Uncensored, Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. It is the 21st of January, 2018. It is the 5th of Shvat, 5778 on the Hebrew calendar. Hope you're doing well. Recording here from Gush Etzion, Israel, with my main man, Benjamin Bresky, from Jerusalem, making it all happen. Without him, we don't have any sound. Get in touch with me during the week, Josh at thelandofisrael.com. On Facebook, it's Joshua Haston. On Twitter, at Josh Haston. And here on Sunday, you're probably hearing the broadcast on Monday, but here on Sunday, we are anticipating the arrival of Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence, a true friend of the state of Israel. I can definitely vouch for him as far as that goes. Very much looking forward to his conversations with the leadership here in Israel and visiting yet again. He's been to Israel several times, and but not in this capacity as vice president. It was a big week in the news world here in Israel, as it is almost pretty much every week. But this week we had the incitement-laced speech by Mahmoud Abbas, the head of the PA. I would call it an anti-Semitic, anti-Israel rant for over 2 hours there. In his capacity as the head of the Fatah party, which runs the Palestinian Authority. And following that rant, the president of the United States, Donald Trump, decided he is going to withhold funding to the tune of $60 million from UNRWA. That is the organization which is in charge of the so-called refugees, the Arabs who left Israel, fled in 1948. And here joining us is an expert on UNRWA, on that organization, is David Bedin, head of Israel Resource News Agency at the Beit Agron International Press Center in Jerusalem. He's also the director of the Center for Near East Policy Research. He joins us now from northern Israel. David, welcome to Israel Uncensored here, Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
David, if you can, let's start by getting right to it. UNRWA. The U.S. government is withholding $60 million plus, the United States being the biggest supporter, biggest funder of that organization. Tell us what that decision means on the ground in terms of the situation here in Israel and the Middle East.
There is an unprecedented decision by the President of the United States to condition funds to UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Work Agency. For years, the U.S. and other nations have given money unilaterally without any checking, without any transparency whatsoever, without any demands. This time, the United States government, having sat for the first time ever, having examined the school books, which our agency had the opportunity to evaluate and translate, and having evaluated also the presence of terrorist organizations inside the camps getting salaries from UNRWA, the U.S. has said, okay, we are going to hold back funds until you get your act together. They're not cutting off the funds, they're conditioning funds, which is a very healthy situation. Now, Vice President Pence is one of five, when he was in the U.S. Congress, was one of 5 U.S. congressmen to review the books, which the U.S. Embassy and the U.S. Consulate never did. They reviewed the books and were shocked. And they called at the time, several years ago, for an overhaul of UNRWA. And now that he's in power, Pence is in power, I believe that he's influenced President Trump to do something about it. And this is very important. And the reason why I'm happy to be on your show is you may have some listeners who may say, what do we do now? What you do now is make your voices heard. The Vice President's office in Washington is functioning. It's very easy to on the internet. You'll see exactly how to contact with Vice President Pence, and to make sure that during his visit in Israel, he raises the issue and he coordinates with Israel and with 60 other donor countries to do the same thing. We're not talking about stopping humanitarian services. We're talking about stopping a war education system.
But David, at the same time here, the U.S. is withholding the funding. UNRWA has gone on the offensive, if you will, and have started a fundraising campaign globally, trying to make up for the lost funds. I don't know how they're going to get to $60 million, but Belgium has actually stepped up, I believe, to the tune of about $20 million. So I guess a third of it, Belgium has decided that they're going to finance or fund whatever the U.S., or at least partially, what the U.S. decided that they're going to withhold. I mean, tell us, what this means.
What's behind that is people haven't given enough feedback to Belgium. Belgium and other nations, you can see it on our website. We have it all listed, the nations that give money to UNRWA. Our website, take a look at it, IsraelBehindTheNews.com. And Belgium has been coordinating the funds for schools because they were given a false, and emphasize, a false report that UNRWA has peace education, which is simply not the case. And it's very important for people to react to it. All it takes, and I can tell you from staffers of the U.S. Congress and the European Parliament, I can tell you that if 10, 15, 20 people contact these people and say, why are you giving money to a war education system, they will wake up to it. If it's reasonable, that are not yelling and not using curse words or anything like that, but people have to say very clearly that a war education, a war introduction, is not even, it used to be incitement, now it's indoctrination. There's no excuse for a United Nations agency supported by Western countries involved in this. Now, our agency has been working on this subject for 30 years, since 1988. Our first report was filed on February 1st, 1988, almost 30 years ago, when we showed how terrorists were given administrative responsibilities in the UNRWA camps. Well, it was basically ignored. You know, maybe I had something. We had something too much to drink that day, or whatever. It was ignored, and now the chickens are coming home to roost. An entire generation of these refugee camps have learned the theme of right of return, what they call right of return, right, by force of arms. Now, I'm standing here in Sot right now, next to homes that Arabs abandoned in 1948. Now, why is that significant? Because in the new school books, the children learn about that. They get maps of exactly where they left in 48 and where they're supposed to go back to and kill the people who live there and liberate it. And this is not something that is said by hint. It's said in very, very clear terms. Now, if this school system was supported by Iran or something, we couldn't do anything about it. And one of the reasons, by the way, it's not good for the U.S. to simply pull out its funds is then the Saudis will come in as they have been done to do, and with more funds, and certainly Qatar, also a dangerous country. And these are countries that believe in teaching the children, the next generation, for war. And they put it under, the reason why we can do something about it is because this is under United Nations auspices. Even though the money goes not so much from the UN, but from donor countries, this is a UN agency, and UN has ideals. The theme, one of the themes of the United Nations is peace starts here. Well, it seems that war starts with UNRWA. And one of our reasonable demands, we started something called the UNRWA Reform Initiative, which we shared with the American government, and we're looking right now for support to bring our experts to the U.S. Congress in next month. But we sold them on this idea of an UNRWA Reform Initiative, and the President of the United States and his people around it are picking up on it, and we need you, the listeners, to pick up on this and to give feedback.
So, David, you're optimistic. I mean, even with the UN Human Rights Council, and you can see all the rogue nations who are a member of that, and the fact that UNESCO continues to persecute the state of Israel and single it out, of course, state that Jerusalem isn't part of Israel and it's occupied Palestinian territory, and Hebron. Are you more optimistic in this regard, in regard to UNRWA, that there can be change?
I'm more optimistic than other people because these other agencies are more or less symbolic agencies, the UN Human Rights Council and UNESCO, etc. But UNRWA is very, very practical, down to earth. We have a school system, and that school system can be reformed. All we need is for 10 people, 20 people to be in touch with each embassy and say, this is not acceptable to be teaching this. We succeeded in Canada back in 2009 when we presented the Canadian government with a report that we actually did for the European Parliament about how UNRWA the workers' union and teachers' union were taken over by Hamas in Canada. Not a pro or anti-Israel country. It just pulled its money out, and now there's a debate whether they're going to put their money back in. Well, if you just talk about it in a reasonable way, that there's no reason for a nation to be giving money without transparency, and that's a very, very easy issue. I want to give you, for instance, I met with parliamentarians from both the UK and Sweden, who are not especially lovers of Israel, lovers of Zion. However, when I asked them, you're giving money for medical services and social services in UNRWA, which we've been there for so many years, and we can show you how the money is being taken away and moved into military activity. Is that what you want? Well, they can't say anything about that. They can't object to a whole overview to see exactly what's happening, whether the medical services are really getting there. And people are talking about a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Well, we're right now looking for a sponsor to do a major film on the glut of food, the glut of medical supplies in Gaza, which are sold on the open market. This is very important. It comes in. There's 108 humanitarian organizations in Gaza. giving $700 million a year for humanitarian services, and the money doesn't get there. The Arabs are really fit to be tied, very angry. Arab population angry about that, and that has to come out in terms of the. I once talked to my younger son when he was little to the Universal Studios in Los Angeles. Well, that's more or less it's the Gaza Universal Studios, which we have going on now, and most of it based in the UNRWA camps.
Yeah, for 70 years now, UNRWA perpetuating the conflict, the war, as you would say here, and instead of resettling those people where in their current locations, unlike Israel, which took in 800,000 Jews from all over the Middle East.
Imagine if your child came home from kindergarten and said, I want to kill off the Israelis because they killed my grandmother and they killed my grandfather and raped my grandmother to take away our home in Ashkelon and put us in this mucky condition that we've been in for 70 years. And, this is the basis of the education. Right turn by force of arms because of what the Israelis did to us in 1948. And to perpetuate not a conflict, but to perpetuate the war. And what we've been filming in the UNRWA schools, which you can see on our website, IsraelBehindTheNews.com, we've been filming children going through military training. 50,000 children going through military training. And during the next round of fighting, we can expect to see those children on the front lines. And there's no preparation for the Israeli army about what to do, but when you see these children approaching you with guns. And this is going to be the major propaganda operation of the other side as they make sure that there's lots of children casualties. And what Donald Trump understands, and I met with a person very close to him, he understands this very, very well. He understands the manipulation, and hopefully this will be followed through with a major holdback of funds, aid, until UNRWA changes its tune. And UNRWA can only change its tune when the donor countries push UNRWA to do so. They have no board of directors. Everything's to the donor countries.
And that is what
donor countries on our website, IsraelBehindTheNews.com.
And that is what the President of the United States has done in an unprecedented and historic move here by withholding the funds to UNRWA. And we'll see in the days and weeks and months how this develops and what happens as a result. I want to thank you so much for your time. From Northern Israel, David Bedin, Israel Resource News Agency, here based in the Jerusalem Beit Agron International Press Center. He's also the director of the Center for Near East Policy Research, doing all of the important work and analysis into the UNRWA textbooks and much, much more. I want to thank you so much for your time, and let's hope that we hear some good news here as a result of the bold move by the Trump administration.
Thank you for
all the
having me
best.
On your program.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much. We're going to take a break. Be right back here with more news. Josh Haston here, Israel Uncensored, Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. Don't go anywhere.
It's much more real than any reality show. It's much more dramatic than any drama. It's much more funny than any comedy. It's like a game show, but it's no game. It's our lives.
Listen to Inside Israel Today with Gil Hoffman, political correspondent for the Jerusalem Post, every week on thelandofisrael.com.
We are back. Josh Haston here, Israel Uncensored, Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. Thanks so much for joining us here on the 21st of January, 2018. That's when we're recording the show. You're probably hearing it on or after the 22nd of January, 2018. Thanks again to David Bedin, Israel Resource News Agency, and the Center for Near East Policy Research for his insight on UNRWA and the fact that the United States is and the Trump administration is currently withholding funding to UNRWA. As we were discussing, UNRWA just perpetuates the conflict instead of trying to end the conflict or war, as David said, keeping people, the Arabs who left Israel in 1948 in squalor, instead of resettling them in the countries that they are in, including Jordan and Lebanon and all the other countries, where, by the way, I don't hear anybody arguing for or trying to defend the rights of those people in those countries. You talk about second-class citizens or not even having citizenship in those areas. It's all really, those people are being used as pawns by UNRWA in order to attack the state of Israel. That's what they're trying to do. They're not interested in resettling them. They're interested in using them on the front lines as pawns against Israel. It's been going on for a long, long time. And finally, somebody took a stand, the Trump and Pence administration. So as we've been discussing, the biggest news, of course, Vice President, by the time you're hearing this, probably already on the ground here in Israel. Over the weekend, he did meet with, in Cairo, with the Egyptian leader, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, saying that the Trump administration is committed to restarting the peace process between Israel and the Palestinians. I'm not exactly sure what he has in mind or what that means or what the others in the administration are putting together in terms of a plan. It is my opinion that the Palestinian Authority should go and Israel should never sit with the Palestinian Authority. I mean, during this meeting, the PA has canceled all meetings scheduled with the vice president. They're not going to be meeting. I think that's great news. The PA has to go. The murderous PA, or formerly Palestinian PLO, because they're one and the same, really. Fatah, they're all one and the same, these so-called peace partners of ours. So I'm not exactly sure what a new peace process would look like, what it would mean, all these different rumors about what it would mean, what it would look like. The PA is not a partner, and Israel should never sit with them, and the U.S. certainly should not pressure Israel to sit with them. In addition to meeting in Cairo, Arutz Sheva, Israel National News, discusses the meeting held with the Vice President Mike Pence, and Jordanian leader King Abdullah. The headline reading, Jordan says that Eastern Jerusalem must be capital of Palestinian state. Not surprising coming out of Jordan. Abdullah quoted as saying it is key to peace in the region, Jerusalem that is, and he believes that at least the eastern side of the city should be their capital. Too bad that if you look in the official Palestinian Authority textbooks and in their school books and everything else, all the other media, they're not talking about East Jerusalem. They're talking about Jerusalem. They're not talking about 67 so-called lines. They're talking about Palestine with maps of the entire state of Israel, because that's what they really want. That's why I don't think any peace process, regardless of who the president is, and again, I view Vice President Pence as a true supporter of Israel, I don't see any process working when the Palestinian Authority is calling the shots. And Israel needs to be strong. We ultimately decide our policy, and we have the right to do so as a sovereign nation. And if we want to be a sovereign nation and not a banana republic, we can say thank you to our friends for their support. Thank you to the U.S. for cutting those funds from UNRWA. But ultimately, our leadership has to decide what's better for us, and we have to go down a path of strength, not weakness. That's the only way. That's the only way we can survive here in this region with so many enemies surrounding us, is via strength. And we have it. Just sometimes we don't show it. But if we show strength, that is the best hope for quiet here. I'm not even going to say peace, because I don't think the other side has that word. Listen to Dr. Mordechai Kedar and others talking about the lack of the word peace. Dr. Harold Rode talking about the lack of the word peace on the other side. But we can have some quiet here, but only through strength. So as you're listening to the show, perhaps I have already been at the Knesset listening to Vice President Pence's speech. Perhaps I'm there right now. Perhaps I'm on my way. But by the time you hear this broadcast, perhaps you will have heard what a true friend of Israel has said in our parliament on Monday. Looking forward very much to that speech. That is going to do it here for today. Again, thanks again to Dave Bedeen. Thanks again to our engineer, Ben Bresky, who made this all happen. Make sure to keep updated with the Land of Israel network at thelandofisrael.com, our very active Facebook page. And make sure you listen to the other shows for all of our wonderful hosts and their programs each day of the week, except for Shabbat, of course. That's going to do it. Get in touch with me during the week, Josh at thelandofisrael.com. On Facebook, it's Joshua Haston, and on Twitter, at Josh Haston. Signing out from Gush Etzion, Israel. Shalom, shalom, everybody out there. Most importantly, between now and when we talk again next week, everybody out there, be safe.
Who are we as a people? Who are we as a nation? What does it mean to be a Jew in the land of Israel, as a Jew in Judea? What is our message to the world? We're finally back in our land, and we get to ask these questions.
Be'ezrat Hashem, we're going to make Judea and Samaria an issue for the entire world, to know that the Jews have a place in the world.
Israel Inspired with Ari Abramowitz and Jeremy Gimpel on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com.